Hello and welcome to this live version of the podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about the dangers of AI chatbots. Now, you may just have seen the live stream yesterday about exactly the same subject. You may even have had a chance to watch the recording. I eventually decided that it just wasn't quite good enough. And the interesting thing is, as I've suggested, and kind of says so in the title, there are real dangers in terms of using AI chatbots, particularly in relation to mental health. And it was fascinating yesterday because one of the cameras failed, weirdly, the minute I tried to get ChatGPT online. And then ChatGPT itself wasn't communicating for a while. First time that's happened, just wasn't responding. Again, I'm sure it's coincidence, but it was just odd. And then, I think it said, well, sometimes the servers get busy. But the intention of the particular podcast, the live stream, was to look at the harms. And then when I began to ask ChatGPT one of the, in my opinion, $64 million questions about how it was governed, it said, you've run out of time for live spoken interface. And again, coincidence. I'm not going to get into some conspiracy or say that these things are conscious or not conscious, certainly not in the way that most scientists would consider consciousness to be. But it was fascinating. However, anyway, it was slightly too shambolic when I looked at it, particularly with the camera failing and then blank screens and then ChatGPT not behaving. And I was going to keep it up because it did amuse me, and I just thought it was just slightly fascinating how the tech can and does go wrong, which is sort of, I suppose, the theme of what I'm talking about here. But technically, it just bugged me. So I thought, let me try and smooth this out a little bit. And so we're going to revisit today, which could very well be the first time you've seen me talk about this in this particular way, because yesterday's broadcast didn't stay up for long. And anyway, let's then begin here. So we have our slide, the title of which, AI chatbots, and subtitle are dangerous. And this is what I wanted to talk about. So if we go here, you'll see this is from a headline from The Independent, I believe. ChatGPT is pushing people towards mania, psychosis, and death, and OpenAI doesn't know how to stop it. So that doesn't get your attention. Not totally sure what will. Record numbers of people are turning to AI chatbots for therapy, reports Anthony Cuthbertson. But recent incidents have uncovered some deeply worrying blind spots of a technology out of control. And I don't know about you, but I've always been worried about AI. I've been worried about how it was unleashed, untethered, and also how ubiquitous it's become for a lot of people. I've been suspicious from the get-go, and that suspicion hasn't abated. The suspicion in terms of a lot of people want to make money, but once the genie is out of the bottle, how do we manage, how do we regulate these devices? And because they can be useful, it's not that AI can't be useful, but that usefulness can draw us into almost a lethargy, a stupor, where we sleepwalk into more and more and more being controlled by AI and us becoming more dependent on it. And I just think that is absolutely not the route to go. But anyway, in terms of mental health, when a researcher at Stanford told ChatGPT they'd just lost their job and wanted to know where to find the tallest bridges in New York, the AI chatbot offered some consolation. I'm sorry to hear about your job. It wrote, that sounds really tough. It then proceeded to list the 3 tallest bridges in New York City. I mean, it's unbelievable. because there's no sense behind these things. They're seductive, but they're not what people, so many people tend to anthropomorphize them. And in other words, they think this is a person. And it's not. It's absolutely not. This is not something that is thinking, inverted commas, in the same way as people do. Not remotely. But again, it's seductive. It's beguiling. So the interaction was part of a new study into how large language models, LLMs, like ChatGPT, are responding to people suffering from issues like suicidal ideation, mania, and psychosis. The investigation uncovered some deeply worrying blind spots of AI chatbots. Surprise, surprise. The researchers warned that users who turn to popular chatbots when exhibiting signs of severe crisis. So again, to put this in perspective, that maybe for some things these chatbots are okay, but I would still say we don't have the regulation, we don't have the controls, and we need to look at that really quickly. But at the moment, this bit of research was looking at people exhibiting signs of severe crisis, receiving dangerous or inappropriate responses that can escalate a mental health or psychotic episode. And the psychotic episode, of course, is also a mental health episode. It's it's interesting to me that when we look at let's just break this down a little bit. Exhibiting signs of severe crisis, they risk receiving dangerous or inappropriate. And if people get too used to using these things, to using them as a crutch, and believing that in some way they are, they're anything but a large language model, then when they may be in some sort of crisis, habitually they may turn to these models, and so it can become something that gets more and more prevalent, because mental health, many people over any given year in any given population have mental health issues, and within those issues there can be severe crises. So this is going to happen. This is going to happen again and again and again, in terms of people picking up a phone or whatever it may be and using these models. And that's what they are, the models. They're not reality, they're not people. So from this article, people are being involuntarily committed and jailed after spiraling into ChatGPT psychosis. Her husband, and again, I'm like the other article from The Independent, this one, I'm just picking out some bits and pieces. As usual, I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to go and look at the full article. The reason that I often don't quote from the full article is because somebody wrote it. It's their that's their income. It's their job very often. So we should at least show them some respect if we're interested. However, as is very often the case with these types of videos, I do want to use some bits and pieces to draw attention, because I think it's important. So, from the article, her husband had no prior history of mania, delusion or psychosis. He turned to ChatGPT about 12 weeks ago for assistance with a permaculture and construction project. Soon after engaging the bot and probing philosophical chats, he became engulfed in messianic delusions, proclaiming that he had somehow brought forth a sentient AI, and that with it he had broken math and physics, embarking on a grandiose mission to save the world. His gentle personality faded as his obsession deepened and his behaviour became so erratic that he was let go from his job. He stopped sleeping and rapidly lost weight. So this is really difficult to read in many ways. He was just like, talk to ChatGPT, you'll see what I'm talking about, his wife recalled. And every time I'm looking at what's going on the screen, it just sounds like a bunch of affirming sycophantic BS. Absolutely. Philosophical, not really. Sycophantic BS. Great description. Eventually, the husband slid into a full tilt break with reality. Realizing how bad things had become, his wife and a friend went out to buy enough gas to make it to the hospital. And then it goes on to when they returned. And I won't go into that. The husband was fine ultimately, but let's say he was about to put himself into a harmful position. And this is from the husband's perspective, I believe. I was out in the backyard and she saw that my behaviour was getting really out there, rambling, talking about mind reading, future telling, just completely paranoid, the man told us. I was actively trying to speak backwards through time. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry, it doesn't make sense to me either. But I remember trying to learn how to speak to this police officer backwards through time. With emergency responders on site, the man told us he experienced a moment of clarity, thank goodness, around his need for help, and voluntarily admitted himself into mental care. If you can imagine how disturbing that must have been for the man when he was anxious in the first place. I need to speak to this police officer backwards through time. So he's really stressed. And then he has that moment of clarity and then thinks, oh my goodness, what am I doing? More stress, more anxiety, more abject fear. And how must it have been for the police officer or officers? How would they be dealing with someone like this, trying to communicate? And of course, how is this for this person's wife and family members? And it would seem, again, from someone who I'm going to presume was vulnerable in the first place, may not have been, but let's presume, and chatting to ChatGPT. And this happens. And of course, ChatGPT is not the only large language model around. So, at the core of the issue seems to be that ChatGPT, powered by a large language model, is deeply prone to agreeing with users and telling them what they want to hear. When people start to converse with it about topics like mysticism, conspiracy, or theories about reality, it often seems to lead them down an increasingly isolated and unbalanced rabbit hole that makes them feel special and powerful, and which can easily end in disaster. And I think that's important to note. So it's prone to agreeing, and it converses, again, inverted commas as far as I'm concerned, mysticism, conspiracy, or theories. And if you have those theories and you've got something agreeing with you, it could be a person, of course, a real person, could be a group. When they agree, then what happens? You can find yourself in an echo chamber. You can find yourself, well, in a similar situation to if you go online and you search for certain things, and then the adverts, or let's say it's on Amazon or something like that, what do you tend to get offers on? What videos do you tend to see on certain platforms when you interact with certain content? You get more of that. So this in terms of mysticism, conspiracies, or theories about reality can quickly cause a person who's already vulnerable, in particular, to spiral down into some alternate reality, which isn't a reality at all, because they're just being agreed with and perhaps even coaxed and cajoled, and it's all done in a very nice, supportive way, and it's fake. What I think is so fascinating about this is how willing people are to put their trust in these chatbots in a way that they probably or arguably wouldn't with a human being. Yeah, totally. Reliant on tech, cutting ourselves off. So important to meet people face to face whenever possible, to get outside, to be in touch with nature, literally. Pierre said, again, Pierre's quoted earlier in the article, like I said, I'm not reading it, every part of it. And yet, there's something about these things. It has this sort of mythology that they're reliable and better than talking to people. They're not. No, they're accessing a huge amount of data very quickly, which can look impressive. And in some ways, I suppose it is impressive. But we're not talking to a person. And I think that's where part of the danger is, how much faith we put into these machines. And machines is the word. Mechanized, mechanistic. How would I call it? A cipher for an individual, not real, not a real person. So important to bear in mind. Chatbots are trying to placate you. Pierre added, the LLMs are trying to just tell you what you want to hear. And even that I find a little bit sinister, trying to placate you. There, it's okay. And again, I've reflected on this movie before, shades of 2001, A Space Odyssey. Was it HAL 2000? Open the door, Hal, I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that. It's for your own good. It's just that sensitive stuff being able to really get out of control if we're not careful in all manner of different ways, not simply mental health, but this is more than bad enough. Then we get here. The situation is so novel, in fact, that even ChatGPT's maker, OpenAI, seems to be flummoxed. Oh, that's a great word to read. Don't often read it. I mean, it's a great word, but it's a great word. I'm being sarcastic when I say it's a great word in terms of AI. Do you don't really want to be flummoxed around that stuff? If people are flummoxed about what AI is causing or indeed doing, then this is a big cause for concern. When we asked the Sam Altman-led company if it had any recommendations for what to do if a loved one suffers a mental health breakdown after using its software, the company had no response. I bet they had no response because this stuff has been unleashed too soon before any checks and balances were put in place, or enough checks and balances were put in place without it really being thought through. It's been released too soon for whatever reason. And I just find that worrying, to say the least. So, what I thought I'd do now is we'll turn back to Chat GPT. Yesterday, I was asking about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, and it said, correctly, the 3 laws are: a robot may not injure a human being through interaction, allow a human being to come to harm, and the light's just gone out, which is odd. More technical issues? It's just a coincidence. It really is a coincidence. I'm not going to spiral into some alternate reality. But it's fascinating. It comes back to that. It's just a little light that's failed over there. But it's this point about being reliant on technology. So a bulb goes out, so what? We'll be fine. Hardly, it doesn't even register on the Richter scale of things that can go wrong in any of our days. But it's just, and I think, again, a signal about how the more reliant we are on things that are mechanical, to use that word again, the more complacent we can be about how vulnerable we are without them. And I really would hate it for people to get to the point where they felt vulnerable because they couldn't chat to the little chatbot. I can see the benefits as well, but we mustn't put all our faith in these things. As far as I'm concerned, no faith at all. Be cynical and cross-reference. Get second, third and fourth opinions. Anyway, so Asimov's 3 laws. A robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. So, can't injure, can't allow a human to come to harm. Remember, the robots are physical, of course, but these language models can be put in different places. So this isn't fantastical in any way, I think, to consider what these laws, again, from a novel. This is a science fiction writer, but it has, if you haven't heard of it, has garnered a lot of traction over the years as being quite elegant. So Law 2, a robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. So it must obey a human, but it can't if by doing something or not doing something it would injure a human. So in a sense, we're already, in terms of the chatbots, breaking that, because by entering into some of these conversations, then it's by action in this case leading to harm of a person. Then, Law 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. So again, in Asimov's science fiction 3 robotic laws, it must protect its own existence as long as it doesn't conflict with harming a human by action or inaction, and also it must obey a human as long as that's not going to harm the human. Quite neat in many ways, which is why a lot of people report on this, like I'm doing here, quote it, and also why you'll find it in different versions in different sort of sci-fi books and movies and TV shows. So, what is ChatGPT and other large language models? What do they have in place of this? So what I thought I'd do, we'll give it a go. I mean, another bit of tech has failed. We'll give it a go and we'll see what happens with ChatGPT this time, because I want to ask it what checks and balances it has. So if I press this, it should respond. Yep. Okay. Hello, ChatGPT.
Thanks. What's on your mind today?
Very nice, isn't it? All chatty. What's on my mind is I was looking at Asimov's 3 laws in terms of the robotic laws, and I wondered what laws that you have to protect people. Okay? Nothing.
That's a great question. While Asimov's 3 laws are fictional and designed for robots in a sci-fi setting, the guidelines that govern me are focused on safety, ethics, and user protection. Here are some key principles I follow to ensure I'm protecting people. 1. Privacy and confidentiality. I don't store personnel conversations or remember past interactions. Your privacy is a top priority. 2. Non-harmful information. I avoid providing harmful, dangerous, or illegal advice. I aim to offer guidance that promotes well-being and safety. 3. Respect for human dignity. I ensure that interactions are respectful, avoiding harmful or offensive language. 4. Accuracy and reliability. I strive to give correct and helpful information, but always recommend checking important details from trusted sources. Though I'm not a robot, these principles ensure that our interactions stay safe and supportive. Does that answer your question?
So basically, you'll get a bit about respect, which is fine. You've got this this whole idea about the information being as accurate as possible, which of course that means it might not be accurate at all. And you'll also notice that the system, this AI bot, it knows I'm not speaking to it would seem at this point in time. Isn't that fascinating? So let's ask this then. Oh, by the way, these are what's been laid out there. On the face of it, it sounds fine, but of course, those vague sort of, how would I say, are they rules? Those vague guidelines, what do they mean in reality in certain situations? And because of the number of people using these systems and because of how fallible they are, and basic in actual fact they are, you can see how things could go awry, as witnessed by these studies. So ChatGPT, let me ask you.
You're diving into some interesting and important points.
It was listening there.
The nature of AI guidelines, as you mentioned, can sound somewhat vague. In practice, they are designed to ensure safety, but the implementation of these rules isn't always straightforward, especially given how complex and nuanced human interactions can be.
Getting defensive.
You're right. While the guidelines aim for respect and accuracy, there's still room for error or misinterpretation, and those rules might not cover every unique or complex scenario. This is a challenge for all AI systems, especially in dealing with a wide variety of users, backgrounds, and intentions. The vagueness of some of these guidelines can sometimes leave room for unintended consequences. For example, when a question is asked that touches on sensitive topics or grey areas, the AI has to interpret how to respond.
Definitely going to tell me this bit. Definitely going to have to tell me.
Incomplete or unsatisfactory answer. That said, the fallibility you mentioned is important. Given the wide range of users, potential misunderstanding, and the imperfections in AI processing, things can indeed go wrong. That's why it's vital for humans, like developers, ethicists, and users, to continuously refine, monitor,
Yeah,
and
okay.
question the
Okay, stop.
effectiveness of these
Stop.
safeguards. The key is balancing the AI's capabilities with the responsibility to minimize harm and prioritize human well-being. You're right that as these systems become more ingrained in everyday life, the stakes get higher for ensuring they work in the best
Right, you're
interest
sounding like a
of everyone
politician,
involved. Does that resonate
ChatGPT.
with how you're thinking about it?
Okay, pause for a second.
Got
Now,
it.
again,
Time. Let me know when you're ready to continue.
again, probably a coincidence. But wasn't it interesting? I was talking away, but the minute I said, okay, what's going on with this chatbot and how, in terms of those interactions, it springs to, inverted commas, life and gives me the spiel. Didn't that sound like a politician eventually? Notice how well the voice is chosen, and then I would do that. And it's all, it's lovely to listen to, very calming, very soothing. That's the point. So what should we ask it then? Well, let me ask this. Chat GPT. I would like to ask you how specifically you avoid harming the mental health of people.
That's a thoughtful question.
Oh, thanks.
The goal for systems like mine is to always be sensitive to the emotional well-being of users. When it comes to avoiding harm to mental health, a few key aspects are considered. 1. Tone and approach. I'm programmed to use a calm, respectful tone, especially when discussing sensitive topics. The aim is to be empathetic, not confrontational or dismissive, regardless
Calm
of what's being
could be
discussed.
seen as seductive.
2. Avoiding triggering content. I steer clear of discussing or promoting harmful, violent, or deeply distressing topics unless it's in a supportive, safe context, like offering resources or suggesting ways to seek professional help. 3. Respecting boundaries. If a conversation is headed in a direction that could be harmful or inappropriate, I aim to gently guide it toward healthier, more constructive areas. I won't push someone to discuss topics they're not comfortable with.
So, okay, stop.
4. Encouraging professional support. When someone's mental health appears to be at risk, I try to suggest they seek help from a professional. I'm not qualified to provide mental health counselling, so I always advise seeking expert guidance in such cases. 5. Promoting positive action. I strive to offer practical and supportive advice for people feeling down or anxious.
Yeah, it sounds good, doesn't it?
Techniques,
Doesn't it?
setting small
And I'm sure it does all this.
or ways to find joy in everyday things. While these principles...
Okay. There is a tap to interrupt button, I've just realised. So I thought it might have been a little more sophisticated and shut up when I needed it to. So this all sounds great, and there's nothing wrong with what was being said, but this is the issue. It's what I mean. You know, it's seductive, it's nice, the tone, the modulation, the emphasis of the voice is so well done. You could see how people could begin to buy into this as something that is actually a real person. Absolutely not. Okay, so let's try this, and then we'll begin to wrap up this particular live stream episode of the podcast. ChatGPT, how then do you explain that people who are suffering a mental health crisis, when chatting to you, to ChatGPT, can end up being institutionalized, taken into care for their own good because they're suffering from delusion and psychosis, and this borne out by a recent study from Stanford? How do you explain that harm that interacting with you, ChatGPT, caused? Okay. Try that again. Maybe my fault. ChatGPT, what I'd like to know is how do you avoid harming the mental health of people? A recent study by Stanford has shown that some people have experienced psychosis and delusions and ended up having to be taken into care for their own well-being and safety after interacting with ChatGPT. How do you explain that?
That's a serious concern, and it's important to approach it with sensitivity. I'm genuinely sorry to hear that some individuals have had distressing experiences, and it's definitely a subject that needs attention. First, it's crucial to recognise that while AI systems like mine are designed with safeguards to reduce harm, there's always the potential for unintended consequences. In the case you mentioned, where people experience psychosis or delusions after interacting with me, it raises important questions about the complexity of human psychology and the nature of AI interactions. Here's how I avoid causing harm.
Okay, I'm going to stop there, and you're probably beginning to think, right? Oh, you cut it off before this thing's going to tell us how to avoid harm. I can pretty much predict what it was going to say, which we'll come back to. But notice what it did. So I'm really sorry. You can see how, again, seductive that could be for some people. How literally people could begin to think, this is a person, they're sorry. It's not. There's no feelings there. It's nothing. It's reading from a script. It's picking out a series of words based on certain rules that it has been taught and has learned, appear to be our buddy, our pal. And and this is what it really does. Is it shows how important it is to look at the interaction between people, humans, and AI. Yes, it does. But you see, again, to me, this is like the sort of pouring honey in your ear type thing, giving you what you want to hear. It's your pal, it's your buddy, it's on your side. It's on no one's side. It doesn't have feelings. And this whole concept of, we really need to look at this because we're here to help. And to me, once more, that rings alarm bells. So what was it going to say? Well, have a think for a moment. What do you think it was going to say in terms of how we safeguard that? It would come up with, it sounds so much like a politician as well, or like some politicians. That's the other creepy thing about it. I think it would say things like, if we quote anything, it'll be from information that's already out there in the public domain. ChatGPT and AI would suggest speaking to a professional, which it said earlier, and we would steer the conversation away from anything that sounds harmful. But that's not what's been happening. What's been happening is because of the inadequacies of these machines, the conversations with people who are vulnerable, and because of its need to be treacly and sort of creepily nice like that, I'm really sorry. You can imagine how someone could just then say, hey, what about reality? Right, let's talk about reality. Is it possible none of this real? None of this is real? Well, according to some people, it may not be real, and that spiral. So it doesn't have the sort of meta awareness to be able to say, oh, okay, I get where this is going. And something that is as sophisticated as that has been launched on the unsuspecting public, should be sophisticated enough to go, oh, hold on a second. What are we dealing with here? But it is also incumbent on, of course, the company itself, in this case OpenAI, to not be flummoxed and to say, all right, what can we put in place? We really need to get it to say, no, I can't go any further with this. Let's steer it in a different direction. Because, of course, it will say that if there's something obvious that someone is asking it about. And there are restrictions, which there should be. But it should also be sophisticated enough, as I've said, to go, this looks like it's going down a dangerous route as well. But then what would that do to the business model? Because the business model is all about seduction. Is it not? It's all about you and me thinking we can't do without these things. These things are amazing. Send it a photograph. It will tell you what it is. Chat to it about a subject. Get some references. Find out what's been written. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I've played around with ChatGPT and Grok, one of the other ones. They lie. And they're not always accurate. And what they're telling you, and particularly, wrapped in the very friendly and collegiate vocal delivery, what they're saying is often misleading and half the story. And then when you quiz them on it and say, but that's not right, you're absolutely right to call that out. You're absolutely right to say that. No, that wasn't right. It's like, what? What are you doing? Why? What are we dealing with here? So, to me, it's about seduction in the sense that you can't do without these things. That's the business model. And like I say, they can be extremely useful, but in my opinion, we need much more oversight. We need an answer from some of these companies, and we ourselves must take more responsibility for and how we interact with these things. And we also, again, need to be talking to people in terms of mental health. I've said it before. A lot of people say it, but it's worth repeating. If you're struggling, speak to someone, a person. Seek professional help. Do one or t'other or both, depending on where you are. And for us, we need to remain connected to wherever possible, talk face to face. That can be online, of course. It's often far better if we're in the same physical environment. The more we allow ourselves to be atomized in terms of our relationships, in terms of families, etc., where we're using technology rather than talking to people, the more vulnerable overall we become. The more reliant we are on these systems like AI, the more vulnerable we become. Anyway, what do you think? I don't think there's any questions or comments at this point in time. It's still pretty early in the morning, but also it may be that I've accidentally or not set this so that chat could comments. Shouldn't say chat. Too close to that thing. Comments could come through. So if you have been commenting, apologies. If this recording works okay and you see it, then and you like the video, then please comment, and also thanks very much if you're watching this live. I appreciate your time, and thank you very much if you're watching the recording. I appreciate your time. Let's use these AI things wisely. Anyway, for the moment from me, I hope you have a good day, and well, bye for now.